here for the party. Trust me, we just getting started. The sound, the vibe, I feel so alive. I'm only here for the party. Trust me, we just getting started.
Hello and welcome back to the David67 Celtic News YouTube channel. And as you should have seen from that wee introduction, this is a video update about the Celtic women's side, the Celtic Girls. And so if you don't follow the Celtic Girls, the Celtic women's side, this video may not be for you, but there are tons and tons of other videos in the archive to watch, and there will be plenty of other videos throughout the week and upcoming weeks and probably possibly years to come. This is a slightly delayed video regarding a post-season review of the Celtic women's side, mostly because it took Celtic's women's side's backroom team and the club so long to actually get around to announcing who was leaving, who was staying, etc. at the club. Celtic about 2 weeks behind all the other big Scottish teams. Rangers, Glasgow City, Hibs, Hearts already had announced who was leaving, who was staying, who was getting new contracts. And it's taken Celtic an extra 2 or 3 weeks to come to that conclusion. That does appear to be largely due to the fact that Celtic were behind the scenes trying to install, in effect, a chief executive officer. Celtic are calling this an operations manager. The man who's coming in to do that job is called Stuart Maguire. He's previously worked with Dunfermline Football Club. Prior to that, he was chief executive officer and assistant manager at Hibs during their successful time, prior to their new success at the end of last season. And so it does appear that the Stuart Maguire is coming in to take over the background administration, financial, player contracts, etc., management of the club, a role that seems to have been given over to Elena Sadiku for the last 18 months, a role that she had no background in. There was apparently some involvement from a couple of people from the main Celtic club to help her with that, but there have been quite a lot of difficulties with Elena Sadiku getting her budgets approved, getting player transfers, player contracts, player contract renewals, etc., all ratified and finalised, and it does appear now that Celtic have got themselves in line with all the other women's clubs in Scotland and actually have a chief executive officer and proper admin and support behind the scenes. And hopefully Celtic will increase their budget to the women's team to bring them up from 4th or 5th place where they are currently, alongside Hearts, up alongside the top 3 financially, and the top 3 who are best run, Glasgow City, Rangers and Hibs, who, not surprisingly, were 1st, 2nd and 3rd last season, with Celtic 4th. So obviously, great start to the season. Celtic started the season in good winning form. We then had a successful qualifying tournament in Lithuania, winning 2 games over there. That got us into the final qualifying round, where we beat Vorskla Poltava, a much higher ranked Ukrainian women's side, in both legs to qualify for the Women's Champions League. A feat no Celtic team had ever managed before, a feat that no Scottish women's team had ever managed before, and a massive success in terms of the team, following on from having come from 2nd place when Elena Sadiku took over the team at the start of 2024. She took them to the title in May, winning with a dramatic last-minute winner by Amy Gallagher that gave Celtic the title in the 23-24 season on goal difference, and then they built on that to qualify for the Women's Champions League. And on the 8th of February, after beating Dundee United 8-0. Celtic were top of the table by 3 points. Admittedly, they had played one more game than the other teams challenging for the top spot. 1 week later, on February the 16th, Celtic lay top equal in the table, one of 4 teams equal on points. Celtic were lying third on goal difference, just ahead of Hibs, who were equal on points but behind us on goal difference. And over the course of the next 10 games, when everybody thought Celtic would power on towards the title, or at least a very good challenge for the title, Celtic's form collapsed. The results went through a very poor spell. Briefly, they improved, and then a couple of poor results. And Celtic ended the season in 4th place, 15 points behind the champions Hibs, and 9 points behind 3rd placed of Rangers. And that has led on to quite a number of changes in Celtic's playing staff, and a quite key major change to Celtic's backroom team, with it would now appear a dedicated operations manager stroke chief executive officer. All the other successful clubs in Scotland, there is a dedicated CEO, which especially has worked very well for Glasgow City, Rangers and Hibs over the last couple of years. Celtic announced there will be 7 players leaving the club. Their contracts have ended and they've all left the club. So we're going to see the end of some good club servants in Lucy Ashworth-Clifford, Kit Lefersky, Colette Kavanagh. Also leaving this time around, Mathilde Carsons, Luana Munoz and Bruna Larenko. And also leaving this time around, Murphy Agnew. Still, there are 3 Celtic players where there are negotiations regarding new contracts, which I guess will get taken over by Stuart Maguire now. Kelsey Docherty, Celia Barclay and Abby Harrison. And so it would appear that Celtic want to keep hold of those 3 for next season. And the indications are also that Celtic are retaining Elena Sadiku to be the head coach of the team for the season 25-26. I think it's important to designate her as a head coach rather than as a manager, and certainly all the other teams designate the person picking the team and the tactics and the training, etc., as their head coach, because a lot of that management side of things, the contracts, the money, the renewals, etc., are handed over to expert in those areas. Now, my own thoughts regarding which players have done well for Celtic this season. I think there are several who've ended up having a very good season. I think one of the interesting things of the players who I think have done well this season is that this is made up of one player who was an established, experienced player from before Elena Sadiku took over. One was a player who came through from Celtic's younger age group into being a first team regular, and the rest were all players signed by Elena Sadiku either in the winter of 2025 or the summer of 2024. So the players I think who did do well, Emma Lawton, I think she was one of Celtic's major star players, came from part-time football, playing for Partick Thistle in the summer transfer window, and very quickly established herself as a first team regular, then got picked for the Scotland under-23 team, then very quickly into the full Scotland women's international team, and she now seems to be one of the first choice players in Scotland's women's national team. Similar story for Saoirse Noonan. She came to Celtic, re-established herself in the full women's team for Ireland internationally, and scored an absolute ton of goals for Celtic, and had a great season. And she was the player of the season in the Channel vote. she got 40% of the vote. Kelsey Doherty got 25% of the vote, and Miriam McInerney and Emma Lawton both got 18%. Morgan Cross, I think, was also a big success. She also came at the end of the summer transfer window. She played a variety of roles. She showed a lot of good pace down the right-hand side, the right side of her front three, good crosses, some goals, and she also got called up into the women's under-23 team for Scotland. Shannon McGregor came from Hibs in the summer of 2024. She quickly established herself as being a first choice starter for Celtic, got into the Scotland women's international team, making her debut. Her form did fluctuate a wee bit towards Christmas due to the Champions League games, and then unfortunately she missed a lot of the second half of the season through injury, but I think she'll be back fighting fit and back to her best form next season. Maria McInerney came through Celtic's academy. She hadn't been really in the Celtic women's team under Fran Alonso. She made a few games in the end of the 23-24 season and through the 24-25 season. She very much became one of Celtic's first choice players, scored a good number of goals, good number of assists, and ended up being one of the key players in Scotland's women's under-23 squad. Other player who I think has had a good season was one of the experienced established players, Kelsey Doherty. Did struggle a wee bit for injury off and on throughout the season, but when she was on form, she won a lot of points, won a lot of games, saved a lot of games for Celtic, and had a very high clean sheets ratio in the games that she started. And I do hope that Celtic get her signed for the next couple of seasons. And Momo Nakau came from American college football, Japanese player, very talented player, played a couple of different roles to start with in Celtic's midfield after she came in the winter transfer window, and then quickly established herself into a number 6 role, moving forward into a more conventional central midfield role. And I think she got better and better as the season goes on, and I think she's going to be an important player for next season. Moving on to the players who I think did okay. I've put Jenny Smith, Lisa Rogers, and Celia Barkley in that category. I think Jenny Smith struggled a wee bit with her change of role in the Celtic team, didn't really get herself properly established either as a right wing back, a wide right midfielder, or a wide right forward player. I think, however, she is a player with a lot of talent, has good pace, is good at finishing, is good at crossing. Just she struggled to be consistent last season. I think Lisa Rogers has the potential in a couple of years' time to be Celtic's first choice goalkeeper. She was a wee bit error prone. I think she was a wee bit struggling with confidence. A couple of times she got thrown in at the deep end. Sometimes doing well, sometimes a few errors and struggles, but I think she's going to get better and better as she gets older and older. And Celia Barkley, I think she's a talented player. I think she was kind of forced into playing a defensive role in a back three. I don't think that's really her best position. I think she's more of a fullback or a wide midfielder. And hopefully, over the course of the summer, Celtic will get their defensive back four or back three sorted out and allowing her to get further and further forward. Then going to move on to some players who had a lot of problems with injuries last season. I think the most important of those was Chloe Craig. I think Celtic missed her massively all season due to her anterior cruciate ligament injury. By the end of the season, she was back into training, back playing football, back doing all the training drills, and so she should be fully fit for the start of the season. And hopefully she should give Celtic some solidity, be it in a back four or a back three, plus also her goals threat from corners and set pieces. and also her ability to convert penalty kicks. Kit Lefersky, very important player when she's fit, and when she was fit, she played well for Celtic. However, she spent most of the season injured or in rehab, and from those injuries, and towards the end of the season, she didn't seem to be able to play a full 90 minutes, seemed to be able to give a good 20-30 minutes and fade away or come on late in the game to try and change things round. And she, of course, is one of the players leaving the club. Also, players who had a lot of injury problems last season, Luana Munoz, she had come back from an anterior cruciate knee ligament operation. She played a few games, dropped out, came back, dropped out, came back, dropped out, and seemed to spend most of her season um, being injured or recovering from injury. When she did manage to get on the pitch, I thought she looked quite good in defence, good ability to distribute the ball. However, um, I think due to her constant injury state and not really properly settling in Scotland, she is one of the players also to leave the club. Final player was Emma Weston, a Swedish international player. I thought she played a couple of very good games for Celtic and then got injured and missed the last 3 or 4 months of the season. I suspect she'll get herself fully fit over the summer and be back, hopefully being a very important player down Celtic's left side next season. Whole heap of players that I've put down as having disappointing seasons: Kelly Clark, Natalie Ross, Lucy Ashworth Clifford, Bruno Lorenko, Amy Gallagher, Murphy Agnew, Colette Kavanagh, Abby Harrison, and both Matilde and Senior Carsons. Both Matilde and Senior Carsons, of course, have left the club. They were both Elena Siriku signings, as was Bruno Lorenko. None of them really got themselves established in the team, despite having had very good credentials coming from European football. None of those three really showed that skill and ability for Celtic. Abby Harrison came in the winter transfer window. Don't think she's ever looked fully fit all second half of the season. She does appear to be a player that Celtic are looking to sign permanently for the next couple of seasons. Hopefully, if she gets herself back to her full fighting match fitness, she could well be a very important player up front for Celtic for next season. Kelly Clark, Natalie Ross, both I think are part-time players. They have other jobs as well as playing football, and I think possibly both of them are struggling to have a work life and a footballing life. And both of them are that wee bit older. However, it does appear both are being retained for next season, unless things change over the next few weeks. Lucy Ashworth Clifford, I was rather disappointed with her all season. She has now left the club. She did show flashes of brilliance, but she did seem to have completely lost any pace up and down the left side. Great delivering a dead ball, quite good coming off her wing, but her delivery, her crosses, her passes, all rather erratic and inconsistent, and she also seemed to really struggle for fitness and energy levels all season. I do hope she finds a good team to play for, as she has always been one of my favourite players for Celtic. Amy Gallagher, massive disappointment. She had a brilliant season in 23-24, but 24-25, lots of really rubbish performances, no goals, no assists, lots and lots of substandard performances. Not very sure why that is. Hopefully she can get back to her old form over the summer. Murphy Agnew, I liked Murphy Agnew a lot, lots of pace, but her finishing was never quite good enough. She missed a lot of chances, and I think at times Celtic didn't use her talents to the best. Colette Kavanagh, tremendously hard trier, but tended to get herself booked rather easily, gave away a lot of fouls, and her creativity and passing and shots on goal not quite up to standard. Again, always liked her as a player, but this season her performances were rather poor. Final player I've put in the disappointing category is Caitlin Hayes. She had been Celtic's star player for several years. She did seem to have 2 or 3 dreams in her life, one of which was to win the title with Celtic, which of course we achieved in May 2024, then to get into the Champions League, which we did in August, September onwards in 2024. And then her third dream, it appears, was to play in the Women's Super League. And then it does appear in the last couple of months of 2024. Caitlin Hayes and her agent were agitating to get her a move away from Celtic and into the Women's Super League, where of course she did go to Brighton. And I think that did cause quite a lot of unsettled times in the dressing room. Elena Sidikou tried her absolute hardest to convince Caitlin Hayes to stay to the end of the season and then move on in the summer of 2025. However, it would appear Caitlin Hayes and her agent were demanding a move in the winter window, and so Celtic had to sell Caitlin Hayes off to Brighton. There are a lot of stories to say that Elena Sidikou had a top quality international centre back all lined up to come in to replace Caitlin Hayes, but the finance people at Celtic refused the amount of money and the contract for that player, who has yet to be named. But again, several sources have stated that there was a player all lined up of high quality and proven ability, but unfortunately, Elena Sidikou's efforts to get that player signed were blocked by the finance people. So in the end, season started brilliantly. We had lots of players who got called up to international football. I think Elena Sidikou made quite a number of very good signings. I think they're all going to turn into very good players for Celtic over the next 2 or 3 years. I think she also made some poor signings, but mostly was let down by her established, experienced players, the Kelly Clarks, the Natalie Rossies, the Colette Kavanaghs, the Murphy Agnews, the Lucy Ashworth Cliffords, the Amy Gallaghers, etc. Also, Celtic did have a massive number of injuries, and I think that in part is due to the fact that up until Christmas of 2024, start of 2025, Celtic only had one physio for the whole team, which is rather a low number. So not terribly surprising that Celtic struggled a lot with injuries, struggled with recovery from injuries, and struggled also with fatigue, with the very crowded fixture schedules, with playing the 2 cups in Scotland, the league in Scotland, as well as those 6 Champions League games. And I do wonder whether the lack of an operations manager stroke chief executive was part of why Celtic's players had that dip in form late in the 24-25 season, with so many of them being uncertain as to whether they were coming back for another season or not, because there was no one really taking full control of those contracts and the money and the finances and stuff. And also, I do wonder whether some of the players were told back in February, March that they weren't coming back again, and that may be why their form dipped. And with 7 players leaving the club, obviously that ripped out about a third of Celtic's main squad, which may have been a wee bit dispiriting and may explain why several players underperformed in those last 2 or 3 months, and at times Celtic's team spirit seemed rather on the low side. However, I am very hopeful for the 25-26 season. I think there's going to be 5 very strong teams in the Scottish Women's Premier League. The league has been made smaller. I think that's also going to help with Celtic's season. We won't be involved in any Champions League qualifiers or Champions League games. I think Elena Sidikou will have a bigger, better coaching staff than before, and I think she also will be able to concentrate on what she has done best at all her previous clubs, which is coaching players, picking teams, deciding tactics, and next season she won't have her second job of managing the club in terms of finances, contracts, etc. With it would appear, from what people say, quite a lot of difficulties getting the finance people from the main club to sanction her money, and still trying to work out where the £400,000 of prize money went, because it didn't seem to really go into the players, doesn't seem to have gone into the contracts. Certainly Celtic have added a couple of coaches for the women's side and added an extra physio or two for the women's side, which are all great things, but there doesn't seem to have been any real investment in the women's team, which I think is in contrast to Glasgow City, Rangers and Hibs. That finishes off this wee season's review of the women's team. As I say, do feel free to pop your own comments into the comment section, and if you are new to the channel and do like the coverage of the Celtic Girls, the Celtic women's side, please do click that like button, and if not yet subscribed, please do click that subscriber button. Not planning any more videos on the women's team until the season starts, but we'll do wee updates in the news section in the community part of the channel if there are any news stories cropping up regarding the women's team, such as signings, etc., for the next couple of months. And so until the next video, goodbye and hail, hail.